So here's the deal. I mean, for the last few years, Sony has dominated the camera market. And I think Canon has just gotten tired of it. I mean, they pretty much just came in and kicked in the damn door and said, "Daddy's home." So today we're going to talk about the Panasonic GH5 Mark II and why I chose that camera over the Panasonic GH6. But then I returned the GH5 Mark II 30 days later, and I'm going to explain that as well. And then explain why I decided to keep the camera that's shooting me right now, which is the Sony A6600. But how could we not talk about the Canon R7, which was just released a couple of days ago? I mean, because when you're talking aps-c cameras, crop sensor cameras, to me this is looking like it's almost going to be the king, because they made the camera that I wanted them to freaking make for the longest time. This R7 pretty much has everything that I'm looking for. And before we move on with the whole rest of the video, let's just take a look at some of the standout features. Because I mean, this thing has 4K 60 at 10-bit, 422. It even has C-Log 3, which I really don't care about much because I don't record in log, but I know some of you do. So that's why I'm mentioning it. I mean, and for the photo shooters out there, this is 32.5 megapixels. It can shoot at 15 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, and with the electronic shutter, double that to 30 frames per second. So if you're shooting sports and wildlife, which a lot of people probably will with this camera if they're doing photos, Canon's got you covered. But I'm going to also explain why I don't feel like I'm going to buy it just yet. All right, so let's just start off with the Panasonic GH6. Now, the headline features for this camera were the 5.7K shooting ability in up to 60 frames per second. Also, you can shoot internally using ProRes to a CF Express card. I mean, that's really cool. The problem with those features are I don't need any of them. I'm mostly shooting weddings, so I don't want to shoot a wedding in 5.7K because it's going to be ginormous. And you're gonna have a project file that's like a terabyte when it's all said and done. I don't want that. So not really practical for me. I went with the GH5 mainly because it had an additional feature that the GH6 did not have, and it's less money. The GH6 is $2,200 and the GH5 Mark II is around $1,500 at the time of this recording. So you're saving quite a bit of money, and you're getting one additional feature, which is live streaming capability. So now with the GH5, I'm still getting a dual card slot, which is something that is very important to me. Except with the GH5, it's not a CF Express card that you're getting. It's two UHS-2 cards, so standard little SD cards. You're getting two of those slots. I like that because I don't want to be forced to shoot with CF Express cards if I don't have to. I still can shoot 4K 60 on that. Fine. I can still shoot full HD up to 120 frames per second. Fine. But I decided to keep the A6600 once I got it. And the reasoning behind that is because the live streaming feature is cool, although you can't record at the same time. And some of you are like, well, who cares? I care. Because when I'm shooting a wedding, a lot of times I'm shooting solo. And I really only want to shoot with two cameras. I don't want to have to bring three. And if I'm live streaming and that camera can only live stream and can't record, well, then I have to set up a third camera because I still need a camera that's going to get me a safety shot, you know, a wide shot while I'm walking around with a gimbal or a monopod with another camera that's in my hand getting a closer shot. So that was kind of a deal breaker for me. Other than that, I thought the camera was really good. Great image stabilization. I shot at a wedding. I just did it completely handheld with that camera. I still have my normal Sony cameras, but then I would get additional shots just hand holding it, and it was great. It looked really good. And then I felt like, well, is it really that much better than my A6600 that I feel like I should sell off all of the lenses that I own for this camera? I should sell off my A6400 too, because that's the B camera that I use with the A6600, and then just go over to Micro Four Thirds. It just wasn't compelling enough. It wasn't doing that much for me that I felt like it was so much better. So I wound up getting rid of it. But now let's jump into the Canon R7. So the Canon R7 to me is more interesting than the GH5 Mark II.
It can also live stream directly from the camera right to YouTube, just like the GH5 Mark II can do. But I don't know if it can record at the same time.
The R7 pretty much does everything. I can't say everything, but it does a lot of what the GH5 Mark II can do in terms of the different recording modes, because it can record up to 4K 60, which is what I want. It's not something I'm going to use all the time, but it's nice to have that as an option. But here's the big thing that the R7 is offering now, that none of the older Canon mirrorless cameras were doing. No record limits. Thank goodness. Finally. Oh my goodness. When they came out with the 90D and it still had a recording limit, I was just pissed off, because that's a good camera. And I was like, that's what I want, but it has a recording limit. And that's why I got the A6600, because I was going to get a 90D. But I was just like, because I have EFS lenses. I don't know if you can see them back there, but those are EFS. But I couldn't use them, with the 90D with the record limit, because that's just a pain when you're shooting weddings. I'm shooting a long ceremony. I don't want the thing to stop recording. If I'm shooting introductions and then rolling into first dance, parent dances, and long speeches, I don't want to stop recording. I just want the cameras to keep rolling. And that's what these Sonys do. That's what the GH5 and the GH6, that's what they can do. And that's why I gravitate toward this Sony. Now the Canon can do it. That's a huge, huge benefit for me. And it makes this camera very attractive. And it's only $1,500. It's priced very well. So what it has over something like the A6600 is it has 4K 60. And it also has dual card slots, which I don't get with my A6600. So now I'm getting those two benefits and the unlimited recording. The battery life is pretty good from what I've researched on YouTube. People are getting like 2.5 hours, I think, of video recording in 4K mode, which again, I'm not always going to record in 4K mode. A lot of times I'll probably be in full HD. So it, to me, is a really good camera. I got a little afraid with it though, because I was like, well, it is a little bit more expensive, but not by much. And then I use the Sony A6400 as like a B cam to my A6600. Battery life on the A6400 is not as good, but it's just a camera that I have set up to get a wide shot, and it works really well for that. And the two match, the two images match because they're both Sony. They're both pretty much the same camera with some additional features that I get out of the A6600. The headphone jack, image stabilization built in. Now, of course, the image stabilization built into the A6600 is not as good as what's in the GH5 Mark II or GH6. That was another reason why I stepped up to the GH5 Mark II. However, it's good enough for the way that I use the camera. But now the R7 even has better image stabilization than the A6600.
So I know what you're thinking. You're saying, well, you just described how it's better than a Sony A6600, but it sounds pretty similar to a GH5 Mark II in terms of its features. And no, not really, because it has a bigger image sensor, so it's going to be easier to achieve a blurry background. It's more than likely going to be better in low light, even though I found the GH5 Mark II was pretty good in low light, but it's going to be even better. And you can't forget about the fact that Canon has some of the best autofocusing around, and it's definitely going to blow the Panasonic GH5 Mark II and GH6 out of the water. Even though they improved the focusing on those cameras, and they definitely did, I could see the difference, it's still not as reliable as using my Sony or the Canon. They just know how to do it better, and that's just what it is.
But it's not beating out in one area, and that is lenses. And that is the only reason why right now I'm not going to move over to it, because it doesn't have a good lens lineup yet. It just has a couple of kit lenses, and that's all. So if you're looking for lenses that are going to be good in low light, it just doesn't have them in crop sensor format for the RF mount. Yes, I know you can just put a full frame lens on there, but that kind of defeats the purpose. The whole reason why I was buying into the A6600 platform or GH5 platform is because those smaller lenses are usually cheaper than the full frame equivalents. That's it. Why spend a bunch of money if I don't have to? The camera, all these cameras record beautiful video. Why get full frame? Some people say, oh, well, because you get better low light performance. This is true, you do. You know, something like an A7S, A7S III, much better low light performance than an A6600. But then again, when I shoot weddings, I'm shooting them like I'm shooting here. There's lights, you know, there's a light right here. You know, there's a background light right over there. I don't typically shoot in a way that I'm in total darkness. So it doesn't really matter. I need good low light performance. It doesn't need to be perfect like the A7S III. That's where these cameras come into play, and I save a lot of money. Because with A7S III, what is that, like $3,000? Maybe it's a little bit more. You get an A6600, it's $1,398. I mean, it's a fraction of the cost, and you can still record really good video. But now you could jump up to an R7, and it's really not a big jump because the price is not really that much more. And to me, you're getting much more camera for your money than a Sony A6600. But I'm just going to wait a little bit to see what lenses they come out with because I don't want to buy full frame RF lenses. Yes, I can adapt my EFS lenses, but let's be honest, the EFS lenses were never really that good anyway. So I'd rather wait to see what new RF crop sensor lenses come out, and then I'll get the camera. But I'm very excited about it. I think the R10 is a good replacement for my A6400 because it also has unlimited recording time. It does not come with 4K 60 uncropped, but it does come with 4K 60 cropped. It crops in by 1.6, I believe. So every other mode is, I believe, uncropped. So it's a nice companion camera. It uses a smaller battery, so it's not going to have the battery life that the R7 has for recording, but I think it's going to be sufficient for what I do. Just buy some extra batteries. It's the same thing that I'm doing with the A6600. This uses a different battery from the A6400. I just bring multiple batteries for each camera, no problem. Oh, and let's not forget about the variable angle flip screen, because unfortunately the Sony A6600 only has a screen that flips up over the camera. So right now I have a mic pack attached to the cold shoe, so I can't flip up the screen. So I have a monitor connected to the Sony so I can still see myself. You know, with something like the Canon, you could flip the screen out to the side and turn it towards you, so that would still work. That's a big disadvantage with the Sony. I really hate that they did that and just didn't add a regular screen. So now with the Canon, you get back to having that screen. But here's another part about that screen. With the Sony, it's a touchscreen, but it only works as a touchscreen for touch focus. You can't control the menus with it. You can't like swipe. If you're viewing your pictures, you can't swipe back and forth or enlarge them or do anything like that, because that's just not how their touchscreen works. But with the Canon, you can. I'm sorry, man. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm slamming the Sony because I've been using this for a few years now. You know, the A6600, the A6400. Well, I've had the A6400 for a few years. I've had the A6600 for actually less than a year. But it's been a great system. The two of these cameras together, Batman and Robin at weddings, they work very well together. I'm very happy with them. But I do miss my Canon. They were easier to use. And with these features that I just mentioned, I really think it is going to be a much better camera for the way I shoot and for the content that I shoot. Weddings, small commercials, YouTube content. I think it's going to be an excellent camera for me. So I'm waiting for these lenses to come out, man, because I really, really want to get it. And I really want to share it on this channel. So, you know, go ahead and subscribe. You know, there's going to be some more content coming out about the GH5 Mark II. I did a lot of videos for that. I just haven't published them yet. You know, how you live stream and all this other stuff. So I will put that out because I recorded it and it's there. And I think will be helpful to people who are thinking about buying that camera. Please be mindful that anything that I talk about is always down in the links below. If you're getting value out of this channel, don't forget to use the super thanks. I think that's what it's called. That's under the video. You can leave a donation of whatever you want. That will be helpful to keep me or keep this channel going. The affiliate links, if you click on them, I'll get a small portion of that as well. So go ahead and use those if you're interested in anything that I talk about. If you're interested in any of the equipment that I use to shoot these videos, that's also in the affiliate links as well in the description. So go ahead and take a look at that. Anyway, I'm Mike Turner. Thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you soon.